Hello ladies, welcome to the Manse. I'm Lydia Ruth and this is Homemaking Radio. We know it's not really radio, but it's a place you can listen to like we did in the olden days. We turned the radio on if we wanted to wash a whole batch of dishes or fold some clothes, and there was always some music or something nice we could listen to. And I also wanted to tell you, go ahead and click the link in the description box below and go to the page on which I have posted this video so that you can see the other things that go with it. I will include some links that I have spoken of today. I will include some pictures maybe, and maybe a picture of a pattern or what I wore, and so you need to go there to see the rest. And also there's no ads on that one because I do these on my own device, and but I have posted them on YouTube, and so there will be some annoying ads that you have to constantly click off. If you'll go over there and watch it, it will still put you on the playlist so that when it's finished you can go to the next one. Now today I want to focus on dressing up for the home to be happy. Plaid is not my best color, but it's so cold here today and I just couldn't get warm, so I've got this flannel plaid shirt that I'm wearing, and I'll tell you how I made my my headband too on the blog if you want to go there to listen to this. And also you can pause it at any time. You don't have to stay the full 40 minutes or hour. And I know a lot of people like the short things. Their attention span is about 20 minutes. But if I'm going to get all set up here, and I'm taking advantage of this room because no one's here today, I'm not going to spend any small amount of time because I don't get to come as often as I'd like to. So it's just going to be long, but you can pause it whenever you like. And I'll try to divide it into 3 sections. And the first one is preparation, getting ready for the home and for your day. And it all starts with a emotional and mental response to being alive. And if you're my age, being vital and being happy about it. One of the great things about it is that you can look back and see that when you became a homemaker, nothing really drastic happened to you. You didn't lose your life, and you didn't lose everything, and you've lived to tell the story of how you managed as a homemaker. And also many of us had grandmothers and great-grandmothers that were still kind of in the Victorian time, and we can show how they remember how they lived as homemakers. And I think it's really important for a homemaker to have a strong feeling of self-worth, a strong feeling of purpose, and that's why dressing up can really help. And I don't mean dressing in things that won't work for the home, but to dress up to feel happy is very important. We're so emotionally involved, we can hardly separate our emotions and our feelings from child rearing, from marriage, from our homemaking. We can't hardly separate it. It's not mechanical for people like us. And many people, when we get to the homemaking part, will think, well, what's so bad about it? You could just do that in a few minutes. I could just do that in a few minutes. But we put our heart into it. So it is different. We stand back and look at it. We consider whether we should keep something. We look critically at our work, and we have our heart into it. And you can feel it when someone lives like that. And it's not the same as being a dishwasher or being a whatever, because you are being a homemaker and you take thought with everything that you do. So let's go back to preparation and focusing on dressing to be happy. And it's going to project happiness to others. Now there are some people that don't like it when other people are happy, so you might have to just be a bit more secretive about it, not smile quite so broadly, but to dress to be happy at home. I'm hoping not to go out today. I'm wanting to stay in all day, and I have not. This is the first time I've spoken to anyone, as it's all empty. The manse is empty, and I get to do a few different things today and not be working around other people. And so dress to be happy and to project that happiness to other people, I think it's very important. And to focus on freshness, youthfulness, and what would I call it? Kind of a crisp newness of life every day with your hair and your skin and whatever it is you wear. And I'd like to read you a paragraph about this from a book, and I will post the name of the book and the page on which I have read this, or I will just maybe write it all out because I think it might be copyright free. And I want you to listen carefully to this. This is Relax at Work or Play. This is so integral to the homemaker that she has to have a vacation attitude at home. And I don't mean a partying attitude where you're just going to throw all care to the wind and forget your responsibilities or let your mind go. I mean a feeling of kind of sauntering through your work in a way in which you feel that you are free, that you're on vacation, that you're in your little holiday home that you go to every year. Only it's not anything different than what you live in, but you have to change your mind about some things. And she says here in this book, relax at work or play. It's just one paragraph, and I just love it. And I read this when I was very, very young, and I still think that it can make you feel so good. Relaxation promotes health and charm, whereas tension deters it. While doing work which makes you tense, how can you make yourself relax? Let's say the work makes you tense. Doing work which makes you tense. You've got to stop approaching it in a mechanical way. You have to quit approaching it as this is just a grueling job which must be done. You're going to have to relax it, and you can go online and find an illustrated exercise, just a drawing or something, for upper back, lower back tension or any kind of tension, and it will just be maybe as little as shaking your wrists or just letting your arms dangle at your feet or something like that, to take that away and then breathe and think something different about the work. Instead of this is an awful job, put on some music and just do it little by little, and pretty soon it will be done and you will have enjoyed it. So relax at work or play. Relaxation promotes health, and tension deters it. So you could be on the way to getting sick once you start stiffening up, once you start being upset at the job. And remember, all jobs are grueling jobs. All work is difficult at times, and there's nothing easy, but you are working for yourself, and so you should even be happier about it. Plus, you're portraying an interest and a love and appreciation for your home that is going to rub off on your children. And even if your children are gone, they are going to detect this attitude. And that's one of the reasons that I like to choose things carefully that go in my home, the cushions, the colors, the wall hangings, things like that, because they're going to evoke a mood. They're going to show the descendants something about me, and going to send a message. Relaxation promotes health, whereas tension deters it. While doing work which makes you tense, how can you make yourself relax? By mind control. You know, mind over matter. The mind controls the body, making it tense or relaxed. Have you ever thought about that? That's why so many of those stretch exercises that I find on, what is it, health.com or something, talks about how you have to let the one exercise that you're in or stretch that you're in, you also have to use your mind to relax. And I'm afraid the way we were taught growing up in phys ed or physical education, the exercises were very bad for you and not done with this in mind, with whole health in mind. When you merely, and I know people, I would like to read you something. Where did it go? Well, it's on my phone. I can't read it to you. And it was about this man, and I will give you the link to this. There's a man who does videos about using light for health. There's the the yellow light, the red light, the blue light, the white light, and different things in the atmosphere that you can collect at certain times during the day when you're in it, which will give you health. And someone had made a wonderful comment about it after listening to it, saying that they'd had a month of this light and walking and praying while they were walking, and that they felt like they were young, and that they had a new lease on life, and that they were happier, and they had more hope and more optimism. And that is the one thing that the world does not want you to have. They don't want you to have any hope, because if you have hope for anything, then they can't supply all their remedies for you, which you'll spend money on. And so when it comes to the home and the jobs that must be done, I think it's very important to relax and to look at it as a mission, to look at it as a goal or a focus or some kind of a purpose in life. And then that helps a lot, because one of your purposes could be increase your skill. Another could be try to find a better way to do it. Another would be try to find out how it could be avoided at all, so that you don't end up with that kind of stress. And so you get to be kind of a research artist and a scientist and everything. And so it says the mind controls the body, making it tense or relax. So some of these exercises that I find are just stretches will always say, make your, hold it for a little while, stay there for a little while, and relax. And pretty soon you'll find your body relaxing. When you merely tell your body to relax, you immediately feel a relief of tension. Additional things which help you relax are exercise and a good mental attitude. So then the author launches into have a healthy mental attitude. This is so important, because you can't even get dressed in the morning in a way that will make you happy and project happiness to others if you don't have a healthy mental attitude. If you don't care, if you have a I don't care what I wear attitude. I don't know when this began, but it was generally thought way back in the, I'm vital now, so way back in the 1950s, I remember when this first crept in, and it was always the people that also were negligent about their other responsibilities in life, who didn't care about their relationships, who didn't care about anyone that they were responsible for, who just didn't care. Well, they also didn't care what they wore. They just didn't care. Well, now that has crept into popular culture, so that we have to appear as though we don't care. So we just threw it on with a pitchfork, like trying to think who that was. It wrote, the one that wrote Robinson Crusoe. What was his name? That was a quote from him. And he talked about a girl that, and I believe he wrote in the 1800s, a girl that appeared as though she had thrown her clothes on with a pitchfork. Do you know what a pitchfork is? Well, back in the olden days, it's a great big giant fork, and you pick up hay with it and toss it onto the pile of hay, and it doesn't have any particular way of being good looking, but it's just out of the way, that's all. So let me keep going here. Have a healthy mental attitude. This attitude, I just want to, I'm supposed to be reading this, but I keep thinking of when this attitude crept in, that it didn't matter what you wore. It didn't matter. And so we just throw something on and go about, because after all, people should remember that book, Man in Demand, that was for young men at home in homeschool, and was written by Wayne and Emily Hunter. And they did it in drawings and cartoons, the teachings, which were easy to understand. And one of them was a young man that didn't care. He was all slothful and didn't care. And he said, God looks on the heart. So people should just look on my heart and not care what I wear. And so there were several scriptures put in there, and the teaching part said, yes, that is true, but people do see you, and they see you in the physical, and they see what you're wearing, and they don't know what your heart is saying. But what you wear can reflect what is in your heart. Now, maybe people didn't understand this or didn't realize it, and they are wonderful, nice, polite people who care what others have to look at, but they just didn't know. And so have a healthy mental attitude, and this whole idea of I don't care that's just another attitude. Wholesome attitudes arise from virtues. Now, virtue means the practice of goodness or strength. Like I've got a chair here, and the virtues of this chair are it's very sturdy and has lasted a long time. And so wholesome attitudes arise. You might want to look up that word wholesome. Do you want to do that for homework today, kids? Wholesome attitudes arise from virtues such as faith, hope, optimism, love, kindness, cheerfulness, sympathy, forgiveness, and enthusiasm. Now, I often read things like this from lists that are in the scriptures. Whatsoever is good, pure, lovely. Add to your faith virtue, and to your virtue self-control. All these things I just love lists because they give you subjects to study in order to develop good character. These pleasant attitudes harmonize with body functions and invigorate the system. Yes, you're going to be healthier if you're happier. And you can tell when you're getting sick or one of your children's getting sick because they get whiny and they get real negative and nothing will please them, and they just will say no to everything. So sometimes I think, parents that say no to everything, maybe they're not feeling well. And people that say no to me all the time, maybe they're just not feeling well, because that's one of those attitudes that negatively affects the body. Pleasant attitudes harmonize with body functions and invigorate the system, promoting good health. That's interesting to contemplate, isn't it? If I had you here for one of my half-an-hour wellness sessions, or maybe recovery from stress sessions, that's one thing we would talk about. And I'd probably give you a test. And I'd tell you something really horrible, and I'd have you test to see if you felt tense, if you felt sad, and we would just test out these attitudes. And you can still do that. And I think one of my children had a little, I don't know what it was was a little kind of like, to measure your pulse or something like that. And if you were thinking of something that was stressful, it would beep or turn color or something like that. And so listen to this some more. These pleasant attitudes harmonize with body functions. See, the unpleasant ones really don't. What happens is your body tries to adjust to it and keep itself healthy, and it takes more stress to simulate it all. These pleasant attitudes harmonize with body functions, with your breathing, and with your muscles, and with your blood vessels, and your heart, and your kidneys, and everything else. There are some people that get kidney stones, and that are now they're able to analyze them to show what kind they are, and some come from stress. So a lot of the stress starts in our minds, and of course we see everything all around us, but we don't have to take it in, and if it's not our business. And so in contrast, it says here, pleasant attitudes harmonize with body functions and invigorate the system, promoting good health. So good health and your body and good thinking are harmonious, okay? So then the opposite are disharmonious, and something's got to give. You'll either end up in bed or not feeling good or sick, or just not being able to function properly, having lots of mistakes because of things. Well, she says here, in contrast, unwholesome attitudes arise from defects of character such as worry, fear, anxiety, pessimism, hatred, resentments, impatience, envy, or anger. Any negative mental attitude has a detrimental effect on the health. Its destructive influence is carried through the nervous system to the entire body. People have been known to die of extreme fear. One of the things that I'd like you to be careful of, and I would tell my descendants this too, is the news media, because if you don't know how people spin things, maybe you've lived around somebody who didn't quite always tell things exactly how they were meant to be understood, and so that it would deliberately send somebody's mind off in a different focus or different direction. Well, if you didn't know that, you would think that the news was all true and good. But if you want to go to, I'll try to leave a link to the Healthy American, Peggy Hall. She goes through news media that frightens everybody to death, and then she turns off the volume and starts watching the video to show you where it doesn't make sense, or where there's an inconsistency, or where it's not been reported, something's not been reported right. And she will show you, if you will go and look at health, I think it's called The Healthy American, or maybe it's Healthy American Peggy Hall. You want to go there. Those of you who are having trouble letting go of the news, and there's going to be a new frightening headline every hour, every day. And I'm from an era where that wasn't going on so much. I mean, they always had their narrative and their stories to keep you frightened. And remember the quote that I read several times here on this broadcast in the past of General Douglas MacArthur, who said something like, always there is some fearful thing that's going to gobble us up unless we rise up in great patriotism and fund this and fund that in order to bring right to the world, or to defend us, and he wrote that these things were decidedly political to create a response in people. But once you figure all this out and you listen to the news or you read it, you think, they're at it again. And how does it affect you? Does it help you get your dishes done? Are you progressing at home the way you'd like to? Are you getting up and getting dressed up? Are you happy with the way you are? Are you watching your weight? Are you being as physically fit as you want? Do you have other goals in mind and things you'd like to learn? Wouldn't you like to learn how to do such and such? And you're neglecting it because you're reading this stuff and it's keeping you from going anywhere in life and from doing anything. Let me continue. Any negative mental attitude has a detrimental effect on the health. Its destructive influence is carried through the nervous system to the entire body. People have been known to die of extreme fear or rage. So I want you to take that in and dwell on it for a little bit. Now, I had two words that I have used over and over. One was edify and one was discern. Now, edify means to build up and to bring out the good, bring out the best. There was another definition. I can't quite recall what it was. It was to build up and to do, make others feel better, And so then there's discern, and that means to be able to distinguish between what's necessary and what's not necessary. And those are the two things that you need to keep in mind all through your day at home. We're going to be discerning all the time to see whether we ought to do one thing rather than a next, and what needs to be done, most important thing that needs to be done, what needs to be cleaned, what doesn't, what are the most important things you need to learn discernment. So you might want to look those that word up, and discern, and then edify, of course, is so important and so beautiful. And so that's what I'm trying to do here, is to edify, and I will read you some other things. So to get dressed up and get ready for the home builds you up and builds other people up. It edifies. And I'll tell you some other things that edify. They're all talking about self-care now because many people are caregivers, and how they try to emphasize how important it is to rejuvenate and to go and revive and rebuild and that sort of thing. And I have discovered that, and a lot of it is luxurious and good for you, and a lot of it is good pleasures, really good things, but also things that build you up are that build me up too is to have some things in order, not to have that confusion going on, because it just really affects my mind. And so I can relax better if I've got things in order. That to me is edifying, and it's also like self-care. And it's similar to the way, you know, some of us who've been married a long, long time, over 50 years for me, people kind of curious, and they'll want to know, well, does your husband take you out on a date, and does he buy you flowers, and do you do this, and do you do that? And we, to us, edifying and building up is being careful with our time, being careful with our manners, being careful with our money, and that we don't have to, and we also like to stay home. So that to me is edifying. It's building up, and people are really sometimes really curious about that. Did he get you a gift for, you know, whatever? And I have said, you know, that I don't. Of course, at our age, you know, you can have so much stuff after a while. Can you imagine 50 anniversaries and the things that you could get for other times that we've decided that we would do the thing that's most edifying to one another, and probably be a little more careful with money, keep it in case so that we don't have to be dependent on others when we grow up. So we want to be careful with that, so we don't need to be buying things. But I can understand if you're younger and you don't and you want to do that, that's fine. But for those who were curious, that's how we build one another up, with good manners and being careful not to leave messes for each other, and not to leave burdens for one another, to do our best to also respect one another's time and the things that they like to do. Keep in mind at what point the other person needs to have more quiet or more rest and that sort of thing. So understand what is the most edifying thing to do at home, the thing that builds you up and builds others up. To me, it's, of course, orderliness, if I can get it. You'd be shocked if you saw there's a grim job to be done, what I have to face. But I've taken some time out here to talk to you and edify you, and probably edify myself at the same time. So I'm going to also read something from Edgar Guest's book. So if you have something you need to do in your home, and you need something to listen to while you work, I'll see if I can find it here. Look at all these bookmarks I've got sticking out of this book. Right here, it's called Improvement. Now, it's a long poem, and I want to read the last part of it first, and then I'll start over. It says here, this is the conclusion of this poem, and I wanted to read this to you first in case I lost you in the beginning here. Okay, so the joy of life is called improvement. The joy of life is living it and doing things of worth, in making bright and fruitful all the barren spots of earth, in facing odds and mastering them and rising from defeat, and making true what once was false and what was bitter sweet. For only he knows perfect joys, whose little bit of soil is richer ground than what it was when he began to toil. Okay, so you take a piece of ground, it doesn't look like it's going to yield much, and it's got a lot of old dead grass in it. You start digging around, and the labor is hard, and it can be very discouraging, but after a while, you'll see results. So let me read the rest of the poem here for you, or poems as we call them. And this is Edgar A. Guest. He was called the America's Family Poet. The joy of life is living it, or so it seems to me, in finding shackles on your wrists, then struggling till you're free, in seeing wrongs and righting them, in dreaming splendid dreams, then toiling till the vision is as real as moving streams. The happiest mortal on the earth is he who ends his day by leaving better than he found to bloom along the way. remember in Wives and Daughters, and Mr. Hamley said, I'm going to drain all that land. Isn't that what we're supposed to do according to the Bible? Leave the world a better place? Were all things perfect here, there would be naught for man to do. If what is old were good enough, we'd never need the new. The only happy time of rest is that which follows strife and sees some contribution made unto the joy of life. And he who has oppression felt and conquered it is he who really knows the happiness and peace of being free. And that's one thing about the home. Even though the work can be very difficult and endless, we are free. And we are free to take a break from it and do something else. We're free to have our own schedule and free to do it according to the way our family lives and to the needs of our family. We're free. The miseries of earth are here, and with them all must cope. For who seeks for joy through hedges thick of care and pain must grope. Through disappointment, man must go to value pleasure's thrill. To really know the joy of health, a man must first be ill. The wrongs are here for man to right, and happiness is had by striving to supplant with good the evil and the bad. The joy of life is living it and doing things of worth, in making bright and fruitful all the barren spawns of earth, in facing odds and mastering them, and rising from defeat, and making true what once was false, and what was bitter, sweet. For only he knows perfect joy, whose little bit of soil is richer ground than what it was when he began to toil. Okay, so those of you who are having problems with being stressed and upset by news media, what I would suggest you do is do what that poem says and find something good to do to alleviate it, to make your home a better place. And I know women who have been through all kinds of things. They've lost loved ones very dear to us in tragic ways, dear to them in tragic ways. They've lost property and home and their reputation and everything. And they, through all of the stress, back in the old days, what these women would do was just start fixing something, start doing something, start doing what they could do. And you know, you may think you don't have anything, but if you have a voice and you have your hands, you can do something at home and to make it a nicer place, a place where you'd rather be. And after a while, you'll find if you really pay attention to your home and to homemaking, going on a vacation and staying in a hotel just seems very inferior to it, because after all, you've got the best at home and you know who's been there. So I'm going to read a prayer by Peter Marshall. Now, he was the chaplain to the Senate, I believe, the U.S. Senate between 1946 and 1948, and I think it was Harry Truman he was under, I'm not sure. But he, is recorded in here his sermons and his prayers. Some of them were, the prayers were at that was when the Senate was opened with a prayer. I'm not sure that's still done, but here was the prayer. At the end of every one of his little sermons, I don't know whether he preached these in a church or whether these were what he said in Congress, but here's a prayer. Forgive us, God, for the doubting suspicion with which we regard the heart of God. We have faith in checks and banks, in trains, in airplanes, in cooks, and in strangers who drive us in cabs. Forgive us for our stupidity, that we have faith in people whom we do not know, and are so reluctant to have faith in Thee, who knowest us altogether. We are always striving to find a complicated way through life, when Thou hast a plan, and we refuse to walk in it. So many of our troubles we bring upon ourselves. How silly are we! Wilt Thou give to us the faith that we can deposit in the bank of Thy love, so that we may receive the dividends and the interest that Thou art so willing to give us. We ask it all in the lovely name of Jesus Christ our Savior. Amen. This was a little prayer that my children just loved when they read this book. It was called The Best of Peter Marshall. And his son still writes things for homeschoolers that you can find online, and are very much into constitutional the Constitutional Republic and the Constitution and the Federalist Papers and the history of the U.S. And I like what he said. We have faith in checks and banks and trains and airplanes and cooks and in strangers and those who drive us in cabs. But we are reluctant to have put our faith in thee. And if God assigned a lady to be a homemaker, for instance, Titus 2 says that the older women should teach the younger women to be guards, to guard the home and to guide the home. And there are other scriptures that talk about that. And it's generally understood that she would have to be there in order to manage it and to guide it and to guard it. But lacking faith that it would work, many women will not be able to do it because they can't relax at home and they can't have faith that it will work. And so, but you have to work it, you know. So I want to read something from the Do's and Don'ts of Yesteryear by Eric Sloan. And we used these in homeschooling, although they're not homeschool books. They're reproductions or reprints of some books written by Eric Sloan. And he often had drawings in them of old architecture, woodwork, things like that, and you know, how to make things, how to pull a stump, how to make a barn lantern, things like that. And you can get this at you know, at any online bookstore. And you can get, I would suggest you start getting new copies of books. I know I like thrift books a lot, but I've gotten some books that I can't keep because they're just too, I don't know, they're not fresh smelling, and you don't want to bring that into the house. But anyway, let me talk about, and it was mainly written for boys, this one was, but there are some things that apply to girls in here, and there is a chapter for girls at the end. Here's one. It's an etiquette book from the old days. Don't stand before the fire to the exclusion of the warmth of others. I don't know if you remember this, those of us who grew up where the fireplace was the source of heat for the house, or maybe it was a pot-bellied stove or some other source of heat, and somebody big would go and stand in front of it, and the rest of us couldn't feel the warmth. And so, but it's just like anything. Don't stand in front of people and block them from talking to other people. It doesn't have that in here, but it reminded me of that sometimes in a family or a group of any kind, someone will come and stand where you can't, where you were talking to someone and someone got in between you and turned around, and now their back is to you and they're blocking you from the conversation. So just don't do that. Don't stand to the exclusion of others. And it says, don't keep looking at your watch as if you are impatient for the time to pass. Oh, yeah. Don't scold your children or your servants before others. Respect them. Yeah, that's very important, not to humiliate other people in front of other people. Don't be an intolerant torment, a tease. The disposition to worry your children, to worry cats and dogs and other people, simply displays the restlessness of an empty mind. You know, someone who's always doing that, they don't really have a well-developed mind. Don't make your departure a major event of the evening. Hovering at the threshold to recount the reception or to make future arrangements is always a boring exhibition. Don't brush against or elbow people or in any way show a disregard. Don't stare or laugh at any peculiarity or manner of dress. Don't point at persons or objects. Don't turn and look after people have passed. So that is very interesting, and it still applies today. Yes, we've all seen people smirk at someone because of the way they're dressed or the way they are, and even those who want to dress a little better are sometimes a target for ridicule. Isn't that interesting? Now I'm going to read from the Jane Austen table. Now if you've got something you need to do, and then I have one more thing after that. We'll be keeping it a little bit short today. This is called trash and sweet things. Now, junk food was called trash food, and I'm sure in some countries you call it trash food, but we've always called it junk food, and it just meant sugary things and things not particularly nutritious. In Persuasion, one of the many bones of contention between young mother Mary Musgrove, the sister of the book's heroine Anne Elliot, and her mother-in-law, who lives up at the Great House, is that every time her children go up to see their grandmother, she spoils them rotten by giving them too much trash and sweet things. And you can see that in the 1990s movie Persuasion. Very well done. Mary complains to Anne that she humors and indulges them to such a degree that they are sure to come back sick and cross for the rest of the day. Well, they knew that bad food, devitaminized, highly refined food was going to make people sick. Mary Musgrove is being mocked here, but Jane Austen no doubt shared Mary's worries about overindulging children. Our sensible writer is always in favor of moderation in all things. On the other hand, she certainly did not approve of cakes and sweet things. By her own admission, she had an eye for a good cake, though, as ever, it is always hard to know whether she has her tongue firmly in her cheek. In a letter to her sister Cassandra, written July 15, 1808, she describes a visit to the bakery and adds, "You know how interesting the purchase of a sponge cake is to me." That sounds a little bit sarcastic. In the homes of the very wealthy, all moderation went out of the window when it came to the dessert course of a formal dinner. On the freshly laid table might be exotic hothouse-raised fruits arranged in pyramids, as Elizabeth Bennet witnessed at Mr. Darcy's stately home in Derbyshire. Sugar paste sculptures of flowers and cherubs, ices served in fantastic architectural shapes, and a profusion of cookies, macaroons, and other delicacies, all served with sweet dessert wines. In the 21st century, we might be happier with the more impoverished Dashwood's take on the final course. When the dessert and the wine were arranged, and Mrs. Dashwood and Eleanor were left by themselves, they remained long together in thoughtfulness and silence. Yes, I have a friend, a young friend, who says after she's been around people, she finds she has to be alone. She has to be quiet. She has to just sit and stare for a while. But speaking of these pyramid-shaped fruit stands and displays, we went to a tour of old Victorian homes years ago in this old historical town. And they had in one of the rooms, one of the dining rooms, there was a lady there doing a demonstration of how they stacked fruit up and made it a centerpiece. It was very interesting. It's just so much fun to go to those. I don't know if they're still doing it now. Most everything is virtual. I mean, so it's hard to find anything. But you know, you could do something like that in your home and teach your children about how this is done. And there are books you can get. Hints on Household Taste would be one of them, and A Butler's Guide to Home Management or something like that. You can find these things and teach your own little course to your children. And so, in closing, I always have skipped the last couple times this thing about people, because, you know, it could get me in trouble. And I always try to use the old books and even some Dickens, because it's common to all eras, and there's nothing new under the sun. We're not suffering some new culture where everybody is selfish or pushy or arrogant. It's always been that way. But today, I get to talk to the young men at home, the homeschool boys, and the husbands. So if you don't think I should do that, then you obviously have never homeschooled boys or grown up in a family of boys like I did. We are always talking to our own people, our own relatives, and especially our sons. I have sons that are now over 40, and I'm still talking to them. You don't get to quit, and they depend on me, you know, to have some kind of sense still left in my head after becoming vital. So I'm allowed to talk to the men, and here's what I want to say, especially to the young men at home and the married men. And I got to thinking about this the other day because, you know, the Bible is so full of I mean, you could always find scripture. We're always taught, you know, you hear the sermons, you read the books that talk about women who gossip and who go from house to house gossiping and things like that. And it's always laid on the women, and we know that. But I found one that was leveled at the men, and it does address a problem that's been going on in our culture for quite a while. And this is people who is from 2 Timothy chapter 3, and it talks about people who are slanderous, without self-control, not loving what is good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, and having an appearance of godliness but denying its power, being proud, arrogant, lovers of self, and all that. And so that's in chapter 3. But it says here, and it's talking about men, people. It says, for people will be. And it says, among them are those who creep into households and capture the minds of the weak women. And it says here, just as, and it names a couple of people here. And it says, these men also, it's just as Jannes and Jambres opposed Moses, so these men also oppose the truth. Men corrupted in minds and disqualified regarding the faith. But they will not get very far, for their folly will be plain to all, as was that of those two men. So I was talking about these men that look for, and I wanted to have my phone here because I had it in 3 or 4 different people that were talking about it, and one of them said that these people are just really sneaky, and they will find out somebody in your family or at work or somebody else that will listen to them, and they'll start gossiping about the wives. And even at work, men that are at work in groups will find this, that these men will talk down about their wives. And that was the one thing that I wanted to say today, was don't get into complaining about your wife at home, because this is what goes on at work. I've heard it. I've walked down the aisles of some of these stores and heard these men that are stocking shelves complain about whatever, their wives who are at home because they're not working outside the home, they're not bringing in a paycheck. And so you mustn't ever complain about your wife, even in a joking way. This can be taken in such a wrong way that pretty soon the wife, she gets a nervous feeling. She knows something's kind of off because some people that she knows are not smiling at her, or they don't feel normal, or they're not talking to her, or something like that. And something has been said that might have totally been done innocently. Might have even said, you know, my wife doesn't like such and such type of weather or something like that, and someone takes it wrong. I think the gossip at work is just terrible among the men, and I wanted to mention that because chapter 2 of 2 Timothy, chapter 3, is all about that, and it says that these people, these men, corrupted in mind and disqualified regarding the faith, that they wander, it says here, that they will be, creep into households, sneak into households and capture weak women's minds, burdened with sins and led astray by various passions, always learning and never able to arrive at the knowledge of truth. And you want to read that chapter very carefully to make sure that you don't become a gossip too, because it's always leveled at the women, like they're the only ones, you know, that can gossip. But this chapter shows clearly the men gossip too. And at work is the worst place, because anytime you get a group together and they're talkative, or the work doesn't require them to be quiet or concentrate on something, there will be talk. And many a woman at home feels demeaned, but not quite sure why, but she's being talked about at work. And the men do gossip at work, and I have heard this many times from other women who figured it out and wondered what was going on, because we need to edify our wives. You guys need to edify your wife. That means to build up, and so you cannot participate in that. And I'm sure they will say, oh, we're just all confiding in one another. Or some of the men are complaining that they can't make ends meet, and there's not enough money to pay the bills, and their wife is at home. And the homemaker is often attacked this way, and unfairly too, because she's actually spending less being at home, and she's doing many things that otherwise they would have to pay for. And I know many women at home that just restrict themselves from going too many places in their car just to preserve their gas or the wear and tear on the car, and they're really, really sacrificing. And so these young men whose wives are at home, and the young men don't learn to despise them or disrespect them. I believe there is also a scripture in the New Testament that talks about a man should not resent or despise his wife. And so this ought not to go on. But men are not often chastised for this because, of course, the preachers in churches are men too. And but they're not often taken into a class or taken aside and spoken to about this, whereas someone might feel quite brave to talk to a woman about maybe something that she's not doing or doing. And so I did want to mention that to the men, to be very, very careful about what they say. All of us need to learn to keep our mouths shut about our personal feelings and business at home, about our finances. Here in the U.S., people just generally don't talk about money, and if they want to, they may be exchanging information on what a good sale something is, but they may not say how much they spent or how much they paid for something or how much money they have. We just don't talk about it. It's one of those things. And there are several other things we don't talk about that are very private, but it's getting to where it's more free. And I think we all need to be more careful, not just the men, but we all need to be more careful what we say about each other in our homes. And children in homeschool particularly need to be told, now look, when you grow up and you go out and you're working or you're out in the world, you don't say anything bad about your own family. That's a bad sign too. If you're looking for a marriage partner and they can say nothing good about their father or their mother or their brothers or sisters, you might want to think a little bit about that. Might want to change that attitude, because some people might think it means that's how you will treat your own family when you get your own family. We all have to be very careful about that. And sometimes when the web first started, people would say things to women who had a nice little blog about homemaking or something, that they said these women weren't being open and honest because they weren't saying things about their marriages or about their children or about the struggles they were having or anything like that. But you see, back in the olden days, we kept those things quiet and worked them out. We did not go around having meltdowns over it or anything. We knew that there had to be a way, and so we didn't broadcast it. We didn't broadcast failure to the world because we didn't want to embarrass our families and we didn't want to embarrass ourselves. And so we didn't broadcast it. We didn't go around telling people that we had a rebellious child, or our parents didn't anyway, that we didn't have. I'm trying to say I'm older than I am, but I remember them that they were all pretty quiet about some of the stuff that went on in their families because they wanted some dignity, and everybody wanted to appear to have a successful marriage, a successful family, a successful home, cohesive love for one another. We all wanted that. And now I guess people want to emphasize that dysfunction, so that everybody seems to be dysfunctional, and some people don't feel comfortable because they did have nice families. They had a nice homeschool family, and then someone said, well, there must be something wrong. You better find something you can confess. And but that's not good because it doesn't edify, it doesn't build up. So ladies, I don't have anything else to lecture you about today, and I had hoped to end on a very high cheerful note, and my cheerful books aren't here. Maybe I can find another poem by Edgar Guest to top it off, because I don't want to leave it like that. Okay, so I've read this to you before, and I always liked his. He's the one that wrote the poem. Somebody said it couldn't be done, but he with a chuckle replied that maybe it wouldn't, but maybe it couldn't, but he would be one who wouldn't say so till he tried. So he buckled right in with a bit of a grin, etc. But he has several of these types of poems, and I just love them. They're very edifying. So let's read this one called See It Through. When you're up against a trouble, meet it squarely face to face. Lift your chin and set your shoulders, plant your feet and take a brace. When it's vain to try to dodge it, do the best that you can do. You may fail, but you may conquer, see it through. Black may be the clouds about you and your future may seem grim, but don't let your nerve desert you. Keep fighting yourself in fighting trim. If the worst is bound to happen, spite of all that you can do, running from it will not save you. See it through. Even hope may seem but futile when troubles you're beset, but remember you are facing just what other men have met. You may fail, but fall still fighting. Don't give up whatever you do. Eyes front, head high, to the finish, see it through. And these things are so important for the homemaker to know, because they're going to be guiding and guarding the atmosphere of the home and developing the attitudes of a future generation. And I believe to this, to use an old saying, to the seventh generation, the influence is so great. And also I think too, if you get, as a homemaker, you get restless, try to stay home. And do what we did back in the olden days. We'd lose ourselves in a book, or we'd write a long letter to a friend, or we would sing or listen to music or go for a walk. But be very careful not to get so restless that you think you have to run away, or you think you have to take a vacation from everybody. What we did is we taught our family to be courteous enough that we wanted to take vacations with only them and only us. We did not want to get away from our children. We homeschooled them, so we delighted in having them around us, and we did not use phrases like, I can't wait for school to start again, and get these kids out of my hair. We never, ever said that. And so if you would like to have a happy home, then go ahead and read Titus 2 and see what you can glean out of that. And also commit your ways to God and to pray always for everything that you want, every success that you want. And ladies, I have just about reached an hour here, and I think I have talked enough. And some of you are probably sleeping by now, because I heard that you were also using this to sleep by, for some of you who have a bit of sleeplessness. But that's okay, because at least it will be good for something. And I hope to amount to something someday. So, ladies, stay close to Christ, and thank you for all that you do for me and for the encouragement you give me to do these. And I will talk to you later. Bye.